So, Canon Press just released a very short documentary called How to Save the World in 11 Simple, Not Easy Steps. And it's hosted by Douglas Wilson. So, I just watched it and I figured I'd give it a short review. So, let's go ahead and get started.
For most American Christians, the most visible thing that's falling apart is the old secular liberal order. This is something that sort of took root the late 19th century, and the seeds of its destruction were sown in the sexual revolution beginning in the 60s. And we started to bear fruit in our time. We got cancer earlier. We're in stage 4 now. And the patient is about to die.
So, hello everybody, my name is Eric, and this is Grace Nerd. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy conversation about Christian theology or commentary on culture from a Christian worldview, then make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Leave a like if you enjoy the video, and make sure that you hit the notification bell so that you know when live streams or new uploads happen. Or if you've discovered the podcast in audio form, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe wherever you are. So, if you're unfamiliar with Douglas Wilson or Canon Press out in Moscow, Idaho, he's a somewhat controversial Christian figure who holds to an optimistic post-millennial eschatology or end times theology. That's something that I have talked about on the channel before, and I have to credit him as being one of the major influences that brought me personally to a post-millennial eschatology. But like I said, he has been a controversial figure in the past and has dealt with some controversies surrounding his church and his influence over the town he lives in, controversies surrounding his politics, and controversies surrounding his theology. And I wouldn't be surprised if people showed up in the comments who had a thing or two to say about that. In short, I have looked into his ministry enough to be comfortable with promoting him myself and saying that I have benefited from much of his work. And I'm ultimately at a point where I really don't care what you have to say about it. If anything changes my mind, I'll let you know. So the reason I bring up Douglas Wilson's eschatology, his post-millennialism, is because I would say that this short documentary is basically his end times theology applied. If you come to embrace an optimistic view of the future, a view that Christ is ultimately going to be victorious over the world, then what exactly does that mean in your day-to-day life? I say that this might be a good companion to a book of his that I've read called Rules for Reformers. I would definitely recommend that one as well. So really quickly, I'll run through what the points that he makes are. I jotted them down on my phone here, so I'll read them off. Number 1, be a good egg. Number 2, assume the center. Number 3, be a gate. Number 4, think covenantally. Number 5, love your wife. Number 6, stay in fellowship. Number 7, worship every week. Number 8, teach your kids. Number 9, work patiently. Number 10, keep politics in perspective. Number 11, therefore go. And so like I said, it's a pretty short documentary. I believe it was about 48 minutes. And I'd say it gets to the point really well. It moves quickly and it makes some solid points, I would say. I found it pretty motivating, pretty helpful, and pretty grounding as someone who's relatively recently become a post-millennial Christian. Now, a lot of the points here seem pretty obvious if you walk through them and describe them. But I would say that a lot of them, while they seem pretty basic, they're also things that many Christians forget about and they don't even realize it. Particularly optimistic Christians in their eschatology. We might get very caught up in our grand vision for the future and the way that we want to see the world change, but we forget to bring that home and affect change in our own households. And I'd say that's the main way that this documentary focuses. The documentary focuses down on just being a Christian in the most basic day-to-day ways in terms of paying your bills and taking care of your family and educating your children. One thing that people who might be new to Douglas Wilson's ministry might be surprised by is that he is very much in favor of taking our children out of government schools at this point in American history. Some who watch the documentary may enter it thinking that this is simply a matter of Christian conscience. And I'm not going to sit here and try to argue you out of that, but this is a topic where Canon Press and Douglas Wilson have spent a lot of energy trying to explain why it's so important to really take control of our children's education, whether that be through a Christian school or through homeschooling or something like that. And it's one point where he really definitely hits home in this documentary. Again, I'm not going to try to convince you of that right here, but it's certainly an area of my family's life where, while none of my children are at school age yet, I'd say that it's somewhere where I have made some strong decisions as to what I want to see in the future of my family. I personally hope to homeschool or put my children through Christian school because I see the powerful impact that school has on children and how important it is that we center them on Christ and on the gospel in our education. And so who really is this documentary for? So again, I said that I enjoyed it and I found it to be a grounding documentary, or a good reminder of some principles that I have heard before but are very easy to forget. Number one, I'd say this documentary is for new Christians who really have no notion yet as to end times theology or eschatology, and they want to know how Christians are supposed to impact the world. I think that this is just a good, really basic beginner's course on what the Great Commission is and what it looks like day to day. Number two, I would say this documentary is for people like me who have somewhat recently come to a post-millennial understanding, but we want to know what that looks like as we walk through our lives. And third, I'd say it's, in a sense, for all Christians who want to make Christianity more practical. You don't necessarily have to have a full-orbed post-millennial perspective or an optimistic eschatology in order to glean a lot from this documentary. In a sense, no matter what end times theology you have, all Christians are given the same commands by Christ. All of us are given the same marching orders to a large extent. But the person I wouldn't necessarily say this documentary is for is the person that maybe you want to convert to postmillennialism who already is a self-aware, committed, systematic, pessimistic theologian when it comes to end times theology. A lot of the marching orders given here and the expectation we're supposed to have as to what's going to come out of it, it really only makes sense if you've already embraced an optimistic vision of the future. This is not a systematic teaching on why Scripture teaches postmillennialism. But if you maybe are vaguely familiar with the arguments for a pessimistic eschatology, but you're not fully committed to it, you might find this documentary intriguing, and it might sort of set you on a path where you might explore those ideas more fully. And the other person I'd say this documentary probably isn't for is the person you're trying to convince to like Douglas Wilson and Canon Press. I think that Douglas Wilson derangement syndrome is a real thing, and this certainly isn't going to dissuade those people because, as far as I can tell at this point, it's pretty much impossible to dissuade those people. And so, in summary, I did enjoy the documentary. It's very simple, very straightforward, moves along, and gives you a good grounded feeling, and it's pretty encouraging if you're trying to sort of reestablish your thoughts on postmillennialism and optimistic vision of the future. And so go check it out if you're curious. You can find it in the Canon Plus app. I'm not sure. I may have seen a link somewhere where you can watch it for free, but I'm pretty certain that you do need to be a subscriber. There's definitely a lot of great content in the Canon Plus app, so go ahead and check it out. So there you have it. There's my thoughts on this movie, and I hope you enjoyed them. Again, my name is Eric. This is Grace Nerd. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you leave a like. Go ahead and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you know when new uploads or live streams happen. And again, if you found the podcast in audio form, make sure that you go ahead and follow wherever you are. We'll see you around next time.